How's it going? I'm IlaGolden and welcome to my vlog. So, today should be fun. Fun for me, at any rate. And hopefully what's fun for me will be fun for you guys, but who knows. Anyway, as I said at the end of the last one, I'm going to be talking about my fanfic series today, the Tales Saga. Now I know fanfiction's not for everyone. There's probably a lot of you out there that's kind of like, well, what's the point in talking about this tool? But I learned a lot about who I was as a writer writing this series, and I know I keep saying that about a lot of things, but this was initially started right before I went to university. And then whilst I was at university, it's what helped me find how I write. That is a very awkward sounding sentence. What I mean is, before that point, I would just write as and when, and I had no real organisation to it, no real focus on it. But once I sort of hit university and I started writing this, and because I was posting it and there were people there who were expecting me to, have a certain amount of it done so that they could read the next chapter, as soon as possible. That was when I found that I very much needed to find my dedication to writing, to find my focus with writing, to find, what was going to work for me in terms of how I got projects finished. And it's kind of ironic because the final book in this series, I only finished a couple of years ago, and that was after not having touched the series for 3 or 4 years at least at that point. But literally by the time I'd reached the point of originally writing that final book, there was a lot of stuff going on in my personal life and in and around the forum that I was, posting the fanfic onto. So I just got so drained and so tired with it all that I didn't finish it for that reason. But considering that was the 15th book in the series, I think I can be forgiven for, finally reaching my sort of breaking point and my sort of, I know I need to stop this now. Having said that, a couple of years ago I did go back and go through the entirety of the series, changing certain aspects to make certain things stronger and certain things more better, for want of anything else. I went back through the series in order to improve the series, because I still had a soft spot for it. I still loved it quite a lot, and at that point I started posting it to fanfiction.net, where it is still available. During that process, that's when I finally retackled the 15th book, which was very, very small way of the way in at that point. I hadn't really done more than, I think, first 10 or 15 chapters of it, which to some people might sound like a lot, but to me it was barely anything that I've barely started. And I did push through, and I did manage to finish it. I'm not sure if it's as strong as it would have been had I originally wrote it, originally completed it when I was originally writing this series. But at the same time, this was something that took up a huge chunk of my life, whilst I was writing it, whilst I was in university, and a little way after university as well. It was something that was a project that I was running alongside other projects, things that I could actually go out and legitimately get published, and as I started focusing more on them after university, then that's where me and wanting to continue writing the fanfic after the 15th book kind of came to a head a little bit as well. But in terms of what it means to me, and in terms of, do I regret writing it? No, I don't regret writing it. I love it. I do love it. Even sort of in preparation for doing this, and I've just been going back and I've been thinking about certain things that happen in the various books within the series that I wrote. It's just one of those things that it makes me very excited, it makes me very happy. I can picture certain moments and remember what I felt the first time I wrote it, and remember what I felt when I edited it, all the times that I've edited it, all the times I've reread it and improved it, and it's such a big place in my heart. It makes me so excited, it makes me so happy. So no, I would never say that I regretted writing it, never. And in those sort of terms, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, this isn't something I can ever get published, but it doesn't mean it's not something that people can read. It's not something that people can enjoy, and not necessarily just people who are fans of the particular show that it's based on. And I will now have to actually say what show it is. It is Yu-Gi-Oh! It is Yu-Gi-Oh! It is Yu-Gi-Oh! Based, and it's the 4Kids version of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, or the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters series, you know. I do know my stuff a little bit with the, you know, the original Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's sort of an alternate version of events from the end of Battle City onwards. You've got to just basically picture that this fanfic takes place in a completely alternate timeline to what actually happens in the show. Partly because when I first started writing it, the anime over here in England had only just reached the end of Battle City. Not even really. I think it was sort of like partway through Noah's Ark, and if you're a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! You'll know what I'm referring to when I say that. If you're not a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't worry too much about it. All you need to know is that it takes an alternate route from the end of Battle City, or from the end of this particular arc in the story, that I hadn't actually fully reached by the time I started writing the original, the Tales of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is the first book in the series. And before that point, I'd never written a fanfic. So I was about 17, and I had all these ideas in my head about where I'd like the series to go, about, you know, what I would like to happen between certain characters and certain ships that, you know, I definitely sort of had at that point, because, you know, I'm a fangirl. I'm a fangirl. I don't mind being a fangirl. There are plenty of things I'm a fangirl of, and it's something that I enjoy being. I enjoy being a fangirl of the things that I like. I enjoy, you know, imagining things, the things that I like. I enjoy being wrapped in the communities of things that I like, and seeing all the creative projects that come out of it. And that's something I've briefly touched on before, as you know. As you know, if you've watched some of my previous blogs, of course. This is your first time watching one of my blogs. Welcome. I'm a fangirl. I like fan communities. Anyway, so I was sort of discussing this with one of my friends, and that was when she suggested I should try writing fan fiction. And before that point, I'd never really heard of fan fiction before. I didn't really know what it was. This is back in like the very early days of the internet. I'm just that old. So I did, and at the time I started, I didn't know what I wanted to call this fanfic that I was planning to write. So the same friend suggested I just give it a working title. So I gave it the working title of The Tales of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I got probably about halfway through before I decided that I wanted to work on, you know, an actual project rather than just a fanfic. And I will discuss that at some point. the project that I, you know, stopped this one in order to do, because again, it's another important project to me, and it's one that I'm hoping to get published soon. So yeah, I put it on pause, I put it on hold, and then in the lead up to going to university, that's when I first started going on forums, and the first forum that I went on was South Park, and I wrote a couple of South Park fanfics, which I did post up on said forum, and that's when I got a taste of getting feedback from other fans, and, you know, having people interested in my work and wanting to see where it was going and stuff like that, and that was quite exciting. So when I actually went to university and I lost the channels that I was watching, you know, the new series at that point, new episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! On, I looked online for a way to continue watching it because it was something that I wanted to do, it was something that I was interested in, and I didn't want to have to give it up just because I was at university. And that's when I found the YF, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan forum. And that's where I started posting the Tales of Yu-Gi-Oh! I still hadn't given it a proper name at that point. I just posted it as Tales of Yu-Gi-Oh! I still hadn't finished it at that point. I was just like, well, I sort of had a little bit of success with my South Park fanfics. Like, you know, let's see if I can get any interest on here. Let's, you know, I don't know if I'm gonna. And even in my first initial post, I was like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna finish this series, but I just wanna, you know, see what people think. And you know, within a few days, I had a couple of little fans who really just wanted me to keep telling the story and, you know, keep writing it and see where it goes. So I did, and I completed the first book, and I was very satisfied, very, you know, happy that I managed to do that, because at that point in time I wasn't very good at finishing things. I think all writers, when they first start out, probably go through a phase where they're not very good at finishing things, and they either rush the story or they just don't complete the story and they move on to another project. And I think that was one of the first times where I hadn't rushed to the end of the story, and it took the time that it was going to take, and it got to where it needed to get to go to, and it finished nicely. And I think it was one of the first times that I'd managed to do that and feel very, very satisfied with doing that. And then my little fans were like, can you do a second one? We want to know what happens next. So I was like, alright, okay, I'll just write a short epilogue-y type story to follow on. And called it After the Tales, because, you know, I wasn't expecting to write any more. So I was like, well, it makes sense. I never gave that a proper name. I won't give this a proper name. It'll just be After the Tales. And before I'd sort of finished writing that one, I was sort of, you know, posting and writing at the same time, because that's very much what happened. Certainly for the first few books, I was sort of posting and writing at the same time, and then because the forum got reset a few times, I had to repost them, and then I ended up being slightly ahead, and that took the pressure off a little bit, and, you know, that's probably why I ended up with so much of this series. But as I was saying, sort of before I'd finished writing the second book, I started having ideas for the third, and I was like, okay, we'll make this a trilogy. The second book is really short, and the third one, yeah, we'll make this a trilogy. Little did I know. Little did I know. So what's, you know, as I was posting the second one, I sort of, you know, was like, well, I'm starting work on the third, and by this time I was starting to garner a little bit more popularity with the series on the forum, and yeah, it just went from there. So before I knew it, I was 8 books in, wondering where to go next. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting process, an interesting way of sort of getting started and getting into writing a series, and it's probably why I am more of a sequential writer than I am a one-off book writer. I'm not saying that I don't write one-off books. I mean, Echo is a great example of a book which is just a standalone book, but certainly for a while after I finished, or whilst I was working on the Tales and post-Tales, a lot of the stuff that I was working on ended up being sequential and being part of a series and being part of a broader whatever. And I think that was very much influenced by the fact that I do enjoy writing continuous stories. I like staying with a group of characters and moving forward with that group of characters and seeing where they go and seeing where they can go. There's something about that which makes me very happy, both as a writer and as a consumer of stories. I'm reluctant to just say books because obviously, you know, I watch anime, I watch TV, I watch, you know, all the wider spectrum of stories. There's something very exciting about knowing there's a continuation, knowing there's more story afterwards, especially if you care about the characters and you feel like excited about the characters and where they could go and what they could do, and you know, there is something very much about that, you know, it's nice when you can write series. It's nice when you can involve yourself in a long, ongoing story and you don't have to worry so much about cramming all this in, all this emotional drama into one singular story. And it's not that I can't do it, I can, and it's not that I don't enjoy doing it, I can, and I do. It's just there's something so much more freeing about writing something that has a bigger, a longer, a grander narrative to it. And I think if it wasn't for the tales, then it wouldn't be something that I'd necessarily do. So why is the Tales Saga called the Tales Saga? As I mentioned before, the initial book was the Tales of Yu-Gi-Oh! The second one was After the Tales, and the third one was the History of the Tales. Just by that point, I was kind of like, well, you know what? Any more books that I write for this series should incorporate the word Tales somewhere in the title. And with the exception of the fourth book, which is the Fable Tales, all the books follow the formula of the something tales, or something the tales, or something of the tales. So the tales is always the last word, and it's always in that sort of structured way. So obviously it got its name from everything being called the Tales. The Tales Saga. I'm not sure if I was the first one to start using it or if it was one of my fans who was the first to start using it. But from the point in time that it was first mentioned, that's what it was called, and that's what everybody called it, and how everybody came to know it. And, you know, when I was speaking to people both on the forum and off the forum, as it sort of became more towards the end, you know, we knew what we meant when we said the Tales Saga. We knew what we were talking about when we were saying the Tales Saga. So for me, that's what it is. It's not necessarily, well, it is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan fiction. That's definitely a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan fiction because I do use the characters from the show. But for me, it is also the Tales Saga, and the Tales Saga is almost a separate entity from Yu-Gi-Oh! But not at the same time. As I said, it's like an alternate timeline, and that's very much how I've come to see it, and very much how I view it. Yes, it's connected to Yu-Gi-Oh!, but yes, it's also its own thing. It also does its own thing. It also goes in its own direction, and it's very different from the show. Which, for some people out there, is probably a good thing, and for some people out there, is probably a bad thing. But, you know, who am I to say what it should be for you? You know, and I think it's because it is so different from the show, and it does take such a different direction from the show, it is worth people who aren't necessarily into Yu-Gi-Oh! At least giving it a read and seeing if it's something that they might be interested in, if they can sort of, you know, just take in what I've presented as I've presented it, and, you know, not worry too much about what it's associated with. But as I said, you know, that's not always the easiest thing for people to do. I have had a few of my friends who've read it who don't know that much about Yu-Gi-Oh! Who have really enjoyed it, so I know it is possible to really enjoy it without knowing anything about, you know, the series that it's based on, or the characters and their sort of paths, because I've done, I think, a very good job of keeping the part of the show that I enjoyed and part of the show that I like, which is the relationships between the characters, and working on those, and then doing my own thing with those characters and with the ideas that I do bring in. So, you know, check it out if you want to. If you don't, I'm not going to feel at all offended by it. I do understand that fanfiction, as I said, isn't for everybody, and it is one of those things that a lot of people don't really take that seriously, for one reason or another. And I get it. I understand. You know, it is one of those things. But if you want to, I thoroughly recommend checking it out because, you know, I might be slightly biased here, but it is amazing. You know, I don't think I would have spent so long writing the series if I didn't think it was, you know, was worth it. And certainly when I went back through it and I tightened it up and I strengthened it for putting onto fanfic.net, which is where it currently is, and I keep contemplating putting it on some of the other fanfic sites as well, so I'll let you know if I ever get around to doing that at some point, but it's a bit of an undertaking. Understandably, it's one heck of an undertaking because there's so much of it. But if I ever do, then, you know, I will let you guys know. But as at the moment, it's all up. It's all available. Every single book in the series is available on fanfiction.net. And yes, I know 15 books is a very daunting number of stories to have to read, but I would definitely say read books or read Tales 1 through 8 because for me that is the ultimate part of the series. That is where my writing is at its best for the series. My characterization is at the best for the series. And 9 onwards, they're good. They have their strengths and their weaknesses within each of the books, but it is very much a spin-off of the first 8. It's, you know, it's got the biggest time jumps. It's, you know, it's more a through running story through the books, which isn't not completely there in the original ones, but it's more, yeah, it's more of a thing in the 9 through 15. So you know, it's not as strong as the first 8 books. So if you're not looking to read all 15, yeah, fine. But please, if you can, read 1 through 8, or at least, you know, some of them and some of it, because I think it's worth it. I think it shows a lot of the things that I'm into as a writer. A lot of my style, a lot of my strengths and my weaknesses very much come through in the Tales Saga, because I spent so much time writing it and editing it and rewriting it and you know, whatever else, that it's me as a writer, as I've grown, that's how I've grown, and that's part of the way that I've grown and part of the way that I've become IlaGolden. It has been through the Tales Saga, and there's so much I can say about it. There are so many great moments in it. There are so many things that, you know, I will just get in my head of like a theme that I wrote, and just thinking about it just makes me so happy. And there are characters, my insert characters, that, you know, whenever I go back through and reading it, those are the ones I'm excited to see again. Those are the ones I'm excited to interact with again. Those are the moments that I just love, and I don't think you can write something with that kind of passion and it not be decent. It not have some merit, it not have some worth. And, you know, even if nobody else ever agrees with me, I love the Tales, and I'm always going to love the Tales, and it's always going to have such an importance on me and who I am as a person and who I am as a writer, that I'm never going to, you know, never going to be ashamed to admit that I wrote a 15-book long fan fiction based on Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it makes me so happy just thinking about it, and it's, yeah, I don't think I can put it into more words than that. So it's free to check out. There's always a link to it in my descriptions, well, a link to the first book in my descriptions. So it's, you know, easy enough for you guys to find, at least the first book, and then, you know, I'd use me, my writer's name from there, and all the books have got like the number in the title, so you'll know what order they're supposed to go in. But yeah, no, if it's something you think you might be interested in, if it's something you think you could be interested in, if just hearing me talk with such happiness and joy about it has intrigued you at all, then please, please, please check it out. Because if you're not sure about me as a writer and whether or not you want to spend money and buy Echo, then this is a good way of getting a taster of what I am like as a writer without having to pay any money whatsoever. So that's gotta be a plus, right? So anyway, I now want you to decide what the next vlog is going to be. And I really should have thought a little bit more about it. I'm just realising I still haven't actually decided on a topic. So, I think the next vlog will be the origin story. By which I mean, I think I referred to it a little bit when I was discussing the multiverse. But the multiverse does have an origin story, and it has its own. Yeah, we'll go with that. The next vlog will be on the origin story, and I'm pretty sure that will be a fun one for me to talk about. I keep saying that. It definitely be a more intriguing one, I think, for people to listen to. So with that said, I will hope to see you again next time, but for now, see ya!